Okay, so this video is going to be especially helpful for you if you are feeling stuck or stagnant on your spiritual journey, if you feel like you're putting in all this work and all this effort to reach enlightenment. And I'm going to tell you right now, that is not the way to reach it. This is my version, from my opinion, on the 5 stages of enlightenment that I have experienced in my own life. Enlightenment is looked at in the spiritual community as this like end goal. But I think we're missing the point. Enlightenment is not something that you can really push towards. It's not a process that you can rush, but stick with me through the end. Once I go through the 5 stages, I am going to give a few tips on how I think you can speed up the process. All right. What's crazy is that when I started researching all of the ways that different religions and cultures around the world describe enlightenment, first of all, I did this after I came up with my own version, but when I started looking into it, I realized that all these religions, they are all saying the same thing. And so it's crazy that we are essentially constantly pushed fear of something different than us. The freaking division that is pushed all the time because we're all saying the same thing. It's just different ways to get there. And so this is the Eastern side of things like Hinduism and Buddhism. In Hinduism, you have moksha, achieving a transcendent divine union. And in Buddhism, the goal is nirvana, where you basically free yourself from suffering. And both of these are talking about basically transcending the cycle of reincarnation, transcending the cycle of death and rebirth, essentially becoming immortal. And Taoism is talking about balancing the mind, body, and the spirit and aligning with the flow of nature. We go to Eastern religions and we see Christianity is talking about the same things, a process of unification with God through submission to his will. In spiritual talk, that's basically surrendering to the universe. The difference is looking at God as one person versus a force, but nevertheless, it's saying the same thing. Judaism is talking about overcoming your ego, overcoming your mind, and really aligning with your soul, aligning with God. And Islam is saying the exact same thing. They're all talking about oneness. And so, with that being said, I think this graphic right here, you got a human eyeball, and within it exists the entire universe. I feel like this graphic really sums up my idea of enlightenment. Reaching a state where you realize you are the same thing as everything outside of you, as everything in existence. It's all made up of the same thing. Everything is so interconnected. And when you transcend duality and stop identifying with your mind, but instead align with your soul, that is the point where you basically free yourself from suffering and realize what is actually going on in our existence at a deeper level. And so, this idea is something you could definitely read about. You could learn about it, try to intellectually understand it, but it's not going to really hit home until you feel it. It's not really going to be integrated into your being until you experience the feeling. And so we're going to start with the first stage. Every spiritual journey tends to start with some kind of really bad experience or just a culmination, a buildup of very negative feelings. Maybe you're struggling a lot with anxiety or depression or stress, and you hit basically rock bottom. That's what happened to me. It may even take you becoming suicidal, questioning, do I really want to live, to get to this point? Again, that's what happened to me. I hit such a low point that the sheer pain caused me to make a decision. Okay, was I going to give up on life or was I going to actually take back control and make some changes? And luckily, I chose the latter because a lot of people will just stay in that cycle of suffering. And basically, that's a living hell. If you don't take responsibility for your life and begin to change how you look at pain, pain is a great teacher. It's not anything to run from. A state of suffering can essentially be the launch pad. It is the gateway to begin the process of self mastery, to learn more about what this life actually is. And then you're going to get to a point where you just start questioning everything. I was always thinking to myself, is there more to life than this? I really started to think about, why the hell are we here? What is the meaning? What is my purpose? What am I meant to do? And I really started to realize, maybe get into the conspiracies a little bit. I started to realize why society is set up for us to fail. Why is society set up for us to be a lower version of ourselves? I started questioning, what is money and what exactly is worth sacrificing for it? Why has my life gotten to this point? What decisions did I make that caused me to end up at this very low point? And this is the awakening. This is when the awakening starts. The awakening is when we have the realization that there is more to existence than what we see on the surface. And we start to get a glimpse of the possibility of deeper truths. And eventually, you start to get some answers. And this next stage is forcing. And I call it the seeker's trap. Because this is the stage where we go headfirst into things. We may go headfirst into the conspiracies. We got the spiritual white girl starter pack there. Kind of an exaggeration, but you get the point. You might go big into the crystals, the astrology. That was a big one for me. The affirmations and manifestations and angel numbers and lucid dreaming and trying to figure out your past lives. I remember I was always so into trying to figure out my past lives. And I was just going out and getting tons of books, constantly listening to YouTube videos and podcasts and people just talking. And don't get me wrong, I still do love reading books. I do still love learning, but I let them come to me instead of seeking them and trying to force it too much. But it's very easy during this stage to get stuck in, I think, what they call learner's hell, where basically you are consuming information, but you're not really doing anything with it. You have the illusion of evolution, but you're really just in the same exact spot. And at this point, too, you might be trying to control the timing of your growth. You might be trying to speed up your growth. You might be trying to control the path that you're on. And you might think that you have to figure everything out. We have to make sense of everything. And also during this time, I went crazy into being very healthy. A lot of fasting, a lot of just crazy restrictive dieting, and I was overly spiritual. I was overly positive and trying to be all blissful. And it got to a point where it became an obsession. And remember that anything that we obsess over, anything that we need or depend on, we are a prisoner of. Even if the feelings or intentions that we have are good, right? There is such thing as too much of a good thing. I was essentially doing X, Y, and Z, like getting the crystals, meditating, being spiritual to achieve a certain outcome. That, even though it was more positive thinking, positive things, was still attachment. I was still attached. And the lesson I learned here is that spirituality cannot be forced or manufactured. So the fourth stage is when you start to realize that you don't need all of that shit. All of that external shit, it's cool. Like you can still engage with it, but you don't need to depend on it. And just to put it in perspective, over there you got the spirituality starter pack versus the spiritually advanced pack. You got the coffee and cigarettes. You realize that no kind of diet, no kind of really external self-transformation is going to change who you are or how you feel on the inside. And I also realized too that the more I forced, the more my peace slipped away. And the more I just wasted energy, and the more also reality would get distorted when I would force things. And another thing that I did that was not forced was that I accepted who I really was. And I accepted where I was on the journey. I stopped resisting my life because I came to the conclusion that no matter what I achieved, I was never fulfilled. And I always wanted something different. And I let go of needing to know everything or figure everything out. Like it's impossible to really make sense of everything and you're just going to drive yourself crazy. True wisdom is knowing that you don't know. And also taking what you've learned and what you've heard, but realizing too that you have your own unique perspective and knowledge deep down inside of you. And I just started letting go of everything. It felt so damn good. I stopped clinging to labels. I realized that I was labeling everything in my reality. And I was like, why was I labeling it as such? What is good and what is bad? It's all relative, it's all my perspective. And my perspective is creating my reality. And I let go of my identity because it's been built up through years of conditioning, and it wasn't my choice how it was built. I was only clinging to what I knew or what was familiar to me, but that was keeping me stuck in a box. And the toughest realization of all was that even though, again, I'm doing things in a spiritual way, I was still creating attachments and I was forcing outcomes and I was suffering because of it. When you transcend duality, when you no longer get caught in good and bad, right or wrong, positive and negative, and realize that it is all part of life. It's all part of the whole, okay? There we go. Becoming whole, unification. That's why I always say that balance is so powerful and neutrality is so powerful. It's the key to limitless energy. You need positive and negative. Also, this stage is when, shadow work comes into play. Things that are going to need healing, trauma that you haven't processed, things that you've been pushing down, disempowering beliefs or programming or bad habits that you just haven't really looked at and haven't really wanted to change. That's all going to come to the surface. And this may be a time where you feel very heavy, like it might suck, right? You could even call this part the dark night of the soul. But all of this shit needs to come up to the surface to be able to be healed. Everything you notice, maybe the bad parts of yourself that you've pushed down, just keep detaching from it. Try to look at it from a third person perspective and just analyze what's going on, what needs to be fixed, and then let it all go. See what needs to be learned from, what needs to be changed, and then let it all go. And at this point, things really changed for me because I started to trust the universe, trust God, trust that it was working in my favor. And when I did that, a lot of my fear evaporated. I was no longer scared of the unknown. And instead of forcing, I started flowing. Yes, there are definitely times to push, and read a bunch of books and learn things, put in a lot of work. But when it's time to relax and just exist, then you have to really do that. And you'll start riding the waves of the universe instead of swimming against the current. And so eventually then you're going to start to get glimpses of pure unity. I talk a lot about balancing the left and right hemispheres of the brain, balancing the masculine and feminine, becoming the observer of our mind, realize that we are not our mind, and ceasing identifying with every single thing that it comes up with, and really that we are our soul. Our soul is unfragmented. But really, as humans right now, we are fragmented. We are fighting wars within ourselves. And those wars manifest themselves as physical wars in life. The outside is just a reflection of the inside. And when you get to stage 5, the cliche terms, as above, so below, as within, so without, these really start to hit home. The same processes are occurring everywhere in existence, and they all affect each other at an atomic level, at a very, very small level, and then at a basic level in our life, and then at a very large scale in space, in outer space. The same processes are occurring and everything reflects and mirrors each other. And at this stage, you really realize that you are creating everything that you get in life and that your perception really creates a reality. And you're letting go of your identity, your artificial personality. You're transcending the ego, but you're also not demonizing the ego. A lot of us want to talk so much shit on the ego. The ego is necessary for our survival. And so we're accepting it again as part of the whole. And the true power exists in alignment, not force, but alignment. Aligning with your soul instead of your mind, aligning with nature. And you are really experiencing that you're not separate from everything in existence. You are it. It's like a water drop merging into the ocean, losing its separate identity, but becoming part of the whole. So essentially, you're becoming everything and nothing at the same time. And here we also get to balancing our karma, paying our karmic debts. This is supreme balance. Instead of division, it's one. And enlightenment is not the end goal. It's just a way of being. I think if we all unlock this state of being on a consistent basis, that's when the world is going to change. And really, when you start to trust the universe instead of fight it, that's when you become it. When you surrender to it, that's when you become it. And so, hopefully, on your journey, time is a spiral for you and not a loop. In the evolution process, time is essentially a spiral, it's an upward spiral. So, while we are expanding, we're moving forward through life, we also kind of circle back around and return to similar situations or challenges from the past, but we come to it with a different level of understanding, a new understanding. And really, time is non-linear. Like I talked about in the video with time travel and time is not real and all that and all the dimensions. If we're thinking of time as a spiral, it doesn't just go forward, it loops back, right? It's going forward and backward. That'll screw your mind up for a second thinking about that. But hopefully you're not stuck in a loop. If you haven't learned lessons, you're going to be recreating essentially the same experiences until you learn that lesson. So a couple myths about enlightenment. A lot of us might think that it means you got to be blissed out 24/7. You got to be really calm. And that is so far from the truth. Enlightenment to me is really about living fully, being the fullest version of yourself. And so sometimes someone does something to you, they deserve a harsh reaction. Sometimes you got to be a warrior. Sometimes you got to be a sage, right? And you're not just going to have a life of full peace and calm when you reach enlightenment. Trials and tribulations are going to come no matter what. But to transcend them, you realize that you just have to learn from them, take the lessons, and you can gain power from them. Another myth, you don't need special rituals, substances, or symbols to become enlightened. You don't need to be, I think health can help, but I don't think it's the main differentiator. You don't need any external shit to do this because we're looking for internal transformation, changing how we see life, seeing life from a higher dimension or a deeper perspective. And finally, enlightenment is about escaping life. I think we get the idea of all these monks living in the mountains, separated from society, but I think it should be our duty to rub off on other people. If we have mastered ourselves, we should be an example for other people. And you can run to the most peaceful place, but you're not going to find true inner peace. Really, you could be in the most chaotic, stressful, and loud situation, but you can create a state of peace within yourself no matter where you are. And then the moment we've all been waiting for, how to speed up the process, in my opinion. These few things may help. So first, again, becoming the observer. If we're just going to keep identifying with everything that our mind tells us, we're never going to evolve. We're never going to master ourselves. So first we got to realize that we are the soul. We are not our body. We are not our mind. We are the spirit, right? And this one's huge. Learn the lessons the first time. That suffering, that tough experience, it's a gift. Don't screw it up. Learn the lesson quickly and move on to a new lesson. And of course, the faster you let go of needing to control, the more quickly you're going to free yourself from suffering and go to those later stages of the enlightenment process. Of course, if you see suffering as a teacher and not as punishment, you're going to be able to use the lessons that the suffering is presenting and get more powerful because of it. And finally, just a suggestion here, not anything I have done, but if you need a little more discipline, a little more structure, I recommend exploring some kind of schools of thought like the Eightfold Path. I think that's Buddhism, but maybe a laid out process could help you. So that is what enlightenment is to me. Let me know what you think. Would you add anything to the stages? What stage are you on? Are you experiencing any of this? And if you liked the video, definitely subscribe. It helps the channel out a lot. And check out my other videos. That's all I got. See ya.